Hi, my name is Tara Bartholomew, and for this project, Analyzing Mass Media and Popular Culture, I chose to view the magazine, Inside Weddings. As you can see from the cover, the target audience is brides-to-be, specifically the bride-to-be, and you can tell because only the bride is featured on the cover of this magazine. Symbolic culture and material culture in American weddings. Symbolic culture is defined as the ideas associated with a cultural group, marked by ways of thinking and ways of behaving. Material culture is defined as physical objects associated with a cultural group such as tools, machines, utensils, buildings, and artwork. Taking the magazine as a whole, one can easily identify key items of material culture and symbolic culture that define an American wedding. Examples of material culture include the bridal dress, wedding cake, floral arrangements, bouquets, and wedding rings. Examples of symbolic culture include the bride and groom's kiss at the altar, the bride being escorted down the aisle by her father, and the bride and groom being flanked by bridesmaids and groomsmen during the ceremony. The symbolic white dress, folkway, or more. A folkway is defined as ordinary conventions of everyday life that are not strictly enforced. Examples are standards of dress and rules of etiquette. More is defined as norms that carry a greater moral significance and are more closely related to the core values of a cultural group. Mores are norms to which we are all expected to conform. Looking through this wedding magazine, it is apparent that in our culture, it is the norm for the bride to wear a white dress on her wedding day, and judging by the sheer volume of pages dedicated to wedding dress styles, it can be assumed that the bride's dress is an important aspect of the wedding. It also alludes to the fact that their target audience is the bride-to-be in particular. While the white dress is a deeply rooted tradition, fashion designers love to push the limits. Sprinkled lightly throughout are a small handful of examples of non-white wedding dresses and dresses that incorporate a very modest amount of color. So here off to the left you can see a very pale pink wedding dress. It almost doesn't even come through on the picture. In the middle you can see a white wedding dress with very, very light flowers sprinkled on it. And off to the right you can see a white wedding dress with black embellishments. The extremely apprehensive use of color, even by fashion designers, indicates that the use of white is more than a simple folkway for our culture. It is a material symbol rooted in Christian values. Christianity, from which many American wedding customs originate, emphasizes that the man and woman should be chaste until marriage. White is a symbol of the bride's purity and virginity. While not every bride in the U.S. is a virgin and there are no legal repercussions for wearing color, most women still prefer to wear the white dress, if not out of respect for tradition, then because of the negative sanctions such as verbal disapproval from family that would come from not conforming. Given its moral significance, the tradition of wearing a white dress by a bride on her wedding day leans more toward being a more than a folkway. The magazine as a means of social control. The textbook The Real World by Ferris and Stein states that social control can be defined as the formal and informal mechanisms used to elicit conformity. Many brides turn to wedding magazines such as this one for advice and ideas as they plan for their big day. The ideals portrayed in these magazines are internalized by their audience, and the desire to elicit positive sanctions guides brides toward conformity of the ideals expressed in the magazine. Where different regions in the United States and anywhere else where this magazine is distributed may have subtle regional differences in the ways in which weddings are performed or planned for, the perception by this magazine's audience that the ideals presented therein are the norm could create cultural leveling, defined by Ferris and Stein as a condition where unique and distinct regional cultures become lost in favor of the ideals propagated by the mechanisms of social control. The propagation of dominant culture. Off to the right, you can see the cover of an article entitled Celebrity Style. In it are a bunch of different components of a wedding that the writer feels would elevate the bride's wedding more towards celebrity status, and the implication is that every bride should strive for a wedding that achieves celebrity heights and proportions. While most Americans cannot afford the extremely expensive and over-the-top weddings portrayed in this magazine, many people will still consider these types of weddings, which can only be attained by the most wealthy, as the standard by which to measure their own goals for their wedding. Dominant culture is defined as the morals, norms, and practices of the group within society that is the most powerful. This acceptance of something that is unattainable for most as the norm is known as hegemony. We can see through this ideal of having an extravagant wedding that the dominant culture created by the country's most wealthy leaves the rest of us feeling relegated to second class, as the authors of The Real World put it, when we are not able to meet these expectations. Also, looking at these images, I realize that there are not very many pictures of people other than brides. There are a few pictures of brides and grooms, a very much more fewer picture of the wedding party, but other members who would be a part of this celebration are not included in this magazine. Almost no pictures of the parents, no pictures of other close relatives or close friends. Ideal culture versus real culture. Ideals which are valued in principle, but do not necessarily correspond to the behavior and norms that actually exist, are collectively known as ideal culture. The norms and behavioral patterns that are truly exhibited by a population are referred to as real culture. This magazine presents a very idealized representation of what many Americans would like to experience for their wedding, much of which may not be attainable for the average person. Following are some examples of how the magazine portrays principles that may not be possible for the average person in real life. In these images, you see that these brides have been adorned with show props, basically. The message is that the bride is not just a woman wearing white. She needs to be the center of attention. She needs to command a certain, have a certain commanding aspect about her, and everything, the whole focus of the celebration needs to be the bride. Ideal culture. After viewing several pages of wedding dresses, it is readily apparent that the bride is expected to do more than wear a white dress. She is expected to be in top physical shape and exude a sexy aura. Her dress should not simply be pretty, but show-stopping and unique. Real culture. In reality, not every bride will be in exactly the physical shape she wishes to be. Furthermore, financial constraints may prevent her from obtaining a customized and entirely unique dress. And these pictures are advertisements and articles regarding the honeymoon. This advertisement, in the center, shows you that their target audience is towards a young couple, and they are being portrayed as young and fit and perfect. They are not advertising toward an older couple who is getting married later on in life. And off to the right, you can see this couple has traveled to an exotic location, and there are many exotic locations and fancy venues sprinkled throughout these articles and advertisements. Ideal culture. For the honeymoon, it is not enough to simply get away and be together for a few days. Husband and wife should be as fit as personal trainers, and the location should provide a rare and exotic experience. Real culture. For many people, the cost of the wedding itself can be a financial burden. While the honeymoon is an important ritual for American marriages and many couples do choose to travel, the incredibly lavish hotel suites may be substituted for normal rooms, and some still may travel much closer to home, or even honeymoon at home for a staycation of sorts. Here are some quotes and pictures that were sprinkled throughout the magazine that further give an allusion to the bride as being the center and the primary focus of the wedding. Off to the left, I wanted to pour my heart out and let everybody know how truly blessed I am to have such a wonderful woman in my life. In the middle is a picture of two reception chairs, the brides and probably the grooms, but we can only see the brides in focus. And the right says, "Be patient with your wife-to-be, have an opinion on everything, but be amenable at the same time. It's good practice for marriage," meaning the wife gets what she wants and she's always right. There are both subtle and overt undertones throughout the magazine that indicate that the bride's wishes should be the most highly regarded throughout the planning process, and that common sense goals such as sticking to a budget should be tossed to the wind in favor of fulfilling her desires. The reality is that while the bride may indeed have a lot of wishes for her wedding day, there are many factors that determine the final outcome of the wedding. Budgets can often limit the scope of what can be accomplished. The groom and close family members, such as the parents, will likely desire to have input as well. Intimate weddings. As you were able to see, this magazine was able to serve as a lens through which we could see various aspects of the culture surrounding women in the United States, particularly those in the wedding planning stage of their life, which this magazine targeted, such as material and symbolic culture, and the customs and items that define a wedding ceremony, the more for a bride to wear a white dress, social control through the distribution of the magazine, and ideal culture versus real culture. As the ideal culture is expressed through the magazine, there are likely many who will not achieve what is portrayed in its pages. Thank you very much for listening to my speech, and have a great day.